Hello there. I am so glad that you could be here today. My name's Rich, the channel's called New Memphis, and today we're painting up some very ghostly Rogue Psykers from the Blackstone Fortress box set. With how these units look like they're supposed to be, so filled with magical, or I guess, warp energies that they're about to just float away, it just reminds me of ghosts. And when I think of ghosts, I don't know about you, but my first thought is always Danny Phantom. Number 2 is Ghostbusters, and it just so happens that those two fit exactly into my painting style. Colorful and horrifying. And since I'm always looking for an excuse to not have to paint my models in some grimdark style, let's take that inspiration and make it look like these guys are barely being held in this material plane by these chains wrapped around them. That's just a cool concept. I love it. We're rolling with it. Let's get started on the project. After, I remind you to subscribe, please. It does help the channel a lot. Also, feel free to leave a comment below or a like if and only if you like the content. You can leave a negative comment. It still helps with the algorithm, so it's sort of self-defeating. But I am always looking for input, so if you have constructive criticism, yeah, that's always welcome, honestly. Consider joining the Patreon if you want to really help support the channel. And I know I talk too much, so let's just get on to the painting. I wanted something to be a little odd colored, so I ended up going with the Leinenkugel's Berry Weiss, which is, I guess, Weiss. You want to use the proper German pronunciation, which for Warhammer seems fitting. Big fan of this beer. Oh my god. Anytime one of my friends tells me, oh, I drink hard seltzer, it's like, okay, let me get you a Berry Weiss, and then we'll introduce you to some real beers later on. Ooh. Look at that. Gorgeous. Let's get started. To start off with the priming, we'll go ahead and coat these guys in a layer of black, and then give them a layer of white just from the top to create a really nice gradient we can use later. Alright, that wasn't too hard. But now we'll go right into some specific white highlights to make sure their faces and the clothing are still distinguishable. I decided to paint these two different models with the same process, but slightly different colors. We'll start by doing all of the metals, like their staves and the chains, in gold on one model, and silver on the other. Next up, I tried to mix a thin glaze of returning friend of the channel, Vallejo Blue-Green, but I ended up with way too much, and it was vastly too intense. So I split some of it off and decided to cut it with more matte medium and more water to create something that was thin enough we could actually see the underpainting. For the model in gold, we'll do the same thing with Vallejo Emerald and a bit more restraint. They're looking good so far, but to bring the details back out, I gave both models a dry brush of white, just going from above. After that, we can get back to the chains. We'll wash the gold with purple, similar to the corn-corrupted Ogren we did a few weeks ago. And for the silver, we'll use dark vermilion. I wanted a little more complexity in the color, so I decided to dry brush our Silver Psyker with Azure. And our gold with light green. However, that was a little too green, so I went back and went over it with a little more emerald. I was especially careful with this last round of highlights, so much so I had to do them off screen, but I think they turned out very, very well. As for the basing, we'll do the same thing we've been doing for this fittingly illegal chaos army we've been building. First, apply cheap superglue and Elmer's glue in equal proportions and spread them with a bent paperclip and texture our bases. You can use a special tool if you would like. A silicone tool or a rubber tool will work fine, but buyer beware, they will get clogged. Super glue gets on everything and everywhere. I just use a bent paperclip to spread it, so you can just throw it away afterward. Save yourself the trouble of having to clean your tools. There's usually at least a little bit of glue in the recessed areas, so do be careful when painting them later. It's very, very, very easy to end up losing one of your favorite brushes because you accidentally dunked it in super glue. Trust me. So when that was completely dry, we'll base coat them with white. Then give them a wash of azure. Then a dry brush of cork brown. Then we'll pick out a few large bumps and pieces and use London Grey to paint them into rocks. Then we'll just touch a few raised areas with white, including the rim. And dry brush the whole base with white, and I think these are finally done. Just one more reminder to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for being here. This community has been so incredibly supportive of this channel so far. I've been really blessed to have you guys here. You're all amazing. Again, I talk too much. Let's get on to the big reveal. So, what are two things I liked and one thing I want to improve on next time? Well, first of all, I think that the blue and green color schemes I came up with for the bodies of the ghosts worked out very, very well. I do like having those extra dry brushes to add a little bit extra complexity. Very, very good. Super happy with that. I do also like the choice to paint the stabs like I did the chains with the same technique. I think it adds to the incorporeal nature of these ghosts, you know, like they're barely being held into this reality, but still wielding these stabs that are like in reality. Like, I don't know, I think it looks cool. I really like it. I am sort of geeking out over my own work, but you know, if you're not doing that, you know, you're not painting right. You know, you should be proud of your own stuff. And as for one thing I want to do better, I think on the silver chains, I wouldn't use that red again. This was pretty experimental. I hadn't tried this before. I've only ever washed silver with like a black wash, or on some previous models, I did wash them with Vallejo Oily Steel, which is basically just a really dark silver. And that worked out really well. But I think in this case, it ended up looking more like kind of like ketchup. got spilled in the chains. It's fine. I probably would go with maybe like a dark orange next time, something a little more subdued that wouldn't be quite so vibrant as that red. But I do think it looks good, and I'm willing to sit with it right now. And I always tell myself, I'd rather have something that's not quite 100% up on the shelf where I can see it and say, this was an idea that I tried, and then be able to, continue on next time, as opposed to not trying an idea at all. So I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you guys again. You're all so great. And I'll see you guys in the next one.